Welcome to the Smart Talk series, a Henry George School of Social Science podcast. The Smart Talk series is a weekly podcast with an array of discussions held with academics, policymakers, practitioners, and other professionals to explore new ideas and theories within the economics field. Our discussion today was recorded in July of 2023. Our talk is hosted by myself, Nathan Greene, a researcher here at the Henry George School, and our guest, Mr. Thibault Manekin. Mr. Manekin is a social entrepreneur and community organizer from the Baltimore area. I first met him at a professional development training camp where he gave a speech about social entrepreneurship and how we can become the change we want to see within our communities. Thibault is the co-founder of PeacePlayers and Seawall. PeacePlayers is an international nonprofit that helps bridge divides and empower youth through sports and education. They are nationally and internationally recognized. Seawall is a real estate development company that operates as a social business. Collaborating with the community, Seawall has successfully renovated and developed quintessential parts of the Baltimore area, giving them new life and a new look. They have successfully built 3 apartment buildings, offering discounts to local teachers, renovated Baltimore's famous Lexington Market, as well as many other examples, all while shaping their plans based off the community's needs and input. I encourage you to think about Thibault's idea of social entrepreneurship and how his philosophy penetrates not just into his business model, but how he views the idea of work as a whole. Together, we discussed how state and local governments, along with the private sector, can cooperate to help communities develop, how your values can impact your business practices, and how real estate and land can impact society. We hope you enjoy this talk, and please make sure to check back on our page every week for a brand new episode. Thibault Manekin, thank you very much for joining me on Smart Talk today.
Good man, Nathan. Really excited to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to talk today about social entrepreneurship and how companies can really be a positive agent for social change within their communities. When doing some research, I was on your website and I saw that your mission is to reimagine the real estate development industry so that the built environment empowers communities, unites our cities, and helps launch powerful ideas. Can you tell me a little bit about your business, Seawall, and how you guys do business versus the typical real estate company, and how important is collaboration with the community in achieving your goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Seawall was founded 15 years ago, as you said, with the idea of reimagining the real estate industry. We had this realization about 15 years ago that real estate, the control and ownership of land, is the most powerful connected industry on the planet. It touches every single one of us, every single moment of every single day, whether we're aware of it or not. Yet, with that power and connectivity, real estate historically has done more to divide us and keep us apart than bring us together. So I am a huge believer in the importance of reimagining industries. Your generation, Nathan, needs to do more of it than my generation and more than the older generation before it. Where we take things that the world is known to be one way and we flip them upside down, where we're really closely and deeply aligning our purpose in life with the industry that we're the most excited about. Because what you're going to find is that a lot of people are going to share that same purpose. And a lot of people, as a result of understanding that you're really purpose-driven, will be drawn to the work that you're doing because of the reason that you're doing it, because it's going to resonate deeply with them. So we kind of had that realization, and what an honor to be able to kind of reimagine what we thought was the most broken industry on the planet, the one that's kept us apart. And as you said in the opening description of the work we're doing, we approach all of our projects asking ourselves, how can buildings empower communities, unite cities, and help to launch really powerful ideas? Historically, the real estate industry and developers kind of show up and tell a community what it is they're going to give them. And the way that we wanted to change that narrative is making sure that we're showing up in a way that development is happening with and for a community and not to a community.
Interesting. Okay. So something that I thought of when you were talking about that was kind of how real estate developers will come into the conversation and they'll say, this is how we're going to do things, but they don't really listen too much to what the actual members of the community want. Did you guys ever receive any kind of pushback from any of the vested interest or from any of the kind of established players who are benefiting from the status quo?
Who do you mean by who are those players in your words? Just so I make sure we answer the
So some of
question
the
right.
real estate developers, or maybe some of the banks, or even maybe the local government, was there anybody who kind of was saying, no, maybe this isn't for us just because they benefited from keeping things the way they were?
No, Baltimore's a small town, and my impression and lived experience is that people are really supportive of each other here. There's incredible developers out there that are making a ton of money doing this, and that are good friends, and I really respect the lanes that they're in their work and the work that they're doing. Nothing against it, right?
Mhm.
And similarly, I think that they appreciate the different approach that Seawall's taken to the work that we're doing. And I'm really inspired by, we do a lot of mentoring of young developers, especially developers of color throughout Baltimore. And uh, I would say that 95% of the people that come to us, young startup developers who are interested in learning more about this industry,
Mhm.
show up first with the question of, how do I really have a meaningful impact in the community that I grew up in? How do I use the built environment to bring about the change that my neighborhood needs and wants to see?
Mhm.
As opposed to showing up and saying, I think I can make a ton of money in the real estate industry. Please teach me how to make money. The
Right.
folks that show up asking us to teach them how to make money, first of all, we're not good at it, right? Second of all, that's not in alignment with kind of the purpose that we approach this work with. And so it's been really inspiring to see this next generation uh, really approach development from a purpose over profit standpoint, understanding that the two certainly have to be closely aligned. But it's been neat to see, and we hope to see a lot more of it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny because a lot of friends I know, whenever they're interested in the real estate industry, they always talk first about how much money they can make, and that's always their primary concern. I was wondering, how do you guys put purpose ahead of profits, and how do you really put your mission ahead of everything else?
It's such a fine line to toe. I'm really aware of this. Seawall's got a little bit of this motto of purpose over profit, but it's really needs to be further explained because we are a for-profit business.
Hmm.
Um, the purpose that we approach all of this development with is really important. But at the end of the day, if we're not profitable, then we go out of business and we lose that tool that allows us to be in service of our purpose. And a lot of times, developers, especially this next generation, are coming so focused on purpose that they're forgetting about the importance of also running a profitable company. And so I think it's a fine line, and one that certainly takes time to figure out. I'm not pretending like we've gotten it right away, but a real important distinction to make is, it doesn't have to be in real estate, it can be in any industry. We really encourage people to closely align the work that they do every single day with their purpose, but ensuring that they're still offering the best product out there. These buildings that we're building, whether it's apartments for teachers or charter schools or community theaters or food halls or public markets, we're really aware that we're going to deliver a finished product that's going to be the best in the world. And nothing short of that will feel good. And I think when you continue to show up in that way, understanding that you're not going to cut corners, that you're not going to skimp on price and other things, and you deliver something that's really exceptional, even if you're being creative around the financing so that you can keep your rents low for these user groups that you're really committed to empowering. That's the way that it all blends together in a way that you can be more focused on the purpose over the profit, with a real careful warning to make sure that you're not completely forgetting about the profit side. I think that probably the best analogy or the best way to describe it is that the two have to be really closely connected.
Hmm. And how do you kind of ensure that the two are connected? I'm sure that you have some people under you who say, maybe we should do things this way, or maybe we should do things that way in order to kind of boost that bottom line. How do you guys make sure that you stay on track with your purpose?
I think it's through the creative approach that we go about when we start a project. The ability to cut the rents in half for teachers or nonprofits or community theaters or small local diverse businesses doesn't happen at the end of the project on the backside. It happens on the front side. So when we go about to do let's call it a teacher housing project by rehabbing an old abandoned factory in the middle of a city, we're really aware of how important it is to be creative in financing the capital stack up front so that the returns are less significant to the overall project because of the creative sources of capital that have been brought in the project. We can be more patient in that underwriting process. And then, you like I said, you don't cut corners and you deliver an incredible product. And you can make that business decision if you want to keep your rents low for those groups that you feel like have been overlooked for such a long time.
So that kind of leads me to my next question. I remember you were telling us when you came to the Venture for America training camp about the Lexington market, and I heard that finally opened earlier this year. So congratulations for that. I was wondering, how do you go about getting the input from the community, and how does that kind of help guide how you guys go about doing your development?
I love that question. Thank you for remembering, and what a great example of how community development should happen. So Lexington Market is the oldest, longest running public market in the country. First opened in 1782 when America was still fighting the Revolutionary War, and it never missed a day. It's 9 generations, right? It survived world wars and depressions and recessions, and has always been the heartbeat of Baltimore City. That part of West Baltimore today is a shell of its former self for a bunch of reasons. There's a ton of vacancy, a lot of criminal activity, lots of drug dealing and drug use. It isn't the Lexington market that my father or grandfather would have remembered, right? Which was this melting pot for Baltimore City. When we applied to help transform the market because the city realized that it wasn't going to make it, and when our company was awarded the project, we were really clear that before any public announcement was to be made, we needed 9 months to listen deeply to the people of Baltimore. And so the city granted us that time, and almost every night, Nathan, we were in a different part of the city. And our presentation was really simple. It was basically like, Lexington Market belongs to all of Baltimore, and none of us want to see it die on our watch, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys, the people of Baltimore, are the ones who are going to save it. And the question that we asked people was, what would it take for you to fall in love with the market again? So our presentation was really simple, and it took 5 minutes, but then for 55 minutes, we would listen. And the people of Baltimore poured their hearts out as they told us about all the incredible memories they have about Lexington Market and the reasons that they had stopped going and what it would take for them to fall in love with it. So for 9 months, we just listened and took notes. And at the end of that, and throughout the process, 2 clear North Stars began to emerge of what it would take for people to fall in love with the market again. And those were that in order to support the new market had to represent the beautiful diversity of our city. At the time, less than 5% of the vendors in the new market were Black-owned businesses. And in a city that's over 60% Black, that didn't feel in alignment with the people who we had just spent so much time listening to, and they really wanted change. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing was that the city could not look at this as a real estate project. If they did, it would fail. They had to look at this as an opportunity to prove that a single building brought to life in a really inclusive way could unite our city at one of its most divided times. So with that readjustment, that's a little bit of the purpose over profit, right? Mm-hmm. With that readjustment in the reason that we all woke up every day in service of this project and this city and this community, that shift allowed a lot of people to claim ownership and authorship of the project. It wasn't a developer or a city or a group coming in and saying, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to make money, and here's how it's going to benefit you. It was like, how are we going to build this together in a way that honors the tradition that's always been here, what it means to us as a city? And so, we approach it from that standpoint, understanding that the only way that a project like this would succeed, and I really think that there was a 1% chance that it would succeed based on all of the moving parts that existed and all the people that were rooting against it, all of the negative attention that part of Baltimore unfairly has received. The only way was to build this groundswell of people who, over their dead bodies, were going to let Lexington Market miss a day. And so it was a really incredible learning opportunity, and kind of combined decades of our lived experiences of doing it right and doing it wrong, and the importance of listening, and on a massive scale. Typically, on a development project, we're out there listening to several hundred people in a community. This one belonged to the entire city. So wow. It was thousands and thousands and thousands of people that we needed to hear from in order for this to succeed.
Wow.
And I will say, as I wrap that up, as I talked about those guiding North Stars, we started construction on the project the month after COVID pandemic started.
Oh, wow.
At a time when like 50% of restaurants and food businesses around the world were closing their doors, and nobody knew if they'd gather in a space with thousands of people ever again.
Wow.
And so we didn't know. Honestly, we were more starting to think we made the biggest mistake of our lives. But then we trusted the process that had gotten us there, and we released the application round. And Nathan, over 500 vendors applied. Wow. Over 50% were Black-owned businesses. Over 50% were women-owned businesses. Over 50% were city resident-owned businesses. Exactly what the people of Baltimore had asked for.
Wow. It's amazing that against all those odds that you somehow prevailed, and it's an incredible story. I mean, it's no small undertaking. I read that there's over 50 new vendors available for both legacy and newcomers. There's over 50,000 square feet that's been renovated just in the market itself, and about 17,000 square feet for the green space. I mean, that's incredible. I was wondering, what kind of buy-in or help did you have from the state or local government? And what role do you think that they should play in helping these communities start to develop sustainably?
The city and state were incredible, right? It was a $40 million project. It was really important, as I said, that everybody going into this understood that the economics weren't the most important part of this. They had to work, but they weren't the most important part. And the city and state on a $50 million project ended up contributing like 75% of the funds through grants and tax credits and stuff like that. So they were incredible. The project would not have happened without their deep support and commitment to this. And we see this a lot, right? Again, we mentor a lot of young developers. And the reality of it is that the economics of development in Baltimore really don't work no matter where you are, let alone in a poor neighborhood that's struggled with disinvestment. And so I think that the state and city and maybe even national municipalities and governments need to figure out some sort of a mechanism that allows meaningful development to go forward, some sort of a subsidy that doesn't exist today, that has less barriers and strings attached to it, that allows cities like Baltimore and Detroit and so many other kind of cities that might fly under the radar in areas that don't want to charge massive rents for fear of displacement. And so we're not sure what that program looks like yet, but we're starting to give that some thought.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I think there's a lot of experimentation that needs to begin to happen on a state and local level. And when I was living in San Antonio, I could really see that the state government was very involved, and they were at least looking to try and make a difference. And I think that went a very long way.
Yep.
So my last question has to do with the idea of land itself. So this podcast is hosted by the Henry George School, of course. And are you familiar with the economist Henry George at all?
Not very familiar, only by name.
He was a Gilded Age economist, and one of his main contributions to economics was the importance of land and how land values kind of play in poverty and inequality. I know you mentioned land being very important yourself, and so what role do you think that land has within community development, and how do you think we can better utilize it to promote sustainable development?
That is such a hard question to answer, because how we've come about land is unfair to begin with,
Hmm. Interesting.
right? From the very beginning, through like colonization from all over the world. Um, the fact that the people with the biggest guns and the most money and the most power basically had access to as much land as they wanted. And that practice has played itself out throughout the course of humanity. Um, and my city's famous for that, Baltimore, the unfair practice of who gets to live and work and own what and where. And that's the problem with real estate and the control and ownership of land, is that it was never fair to begin with. So I don't have the answer to that question at all, other than ensuring that as land becomes available, through vacant homes, in our city, through vacant plots of land, that there is a really fair and just and equitable way to dispose of that land, that puts it back into the hands of the people from the communities where that land is actually available, maybe even with strings attached to it, that ensures that it stays in the right hands and is developed in a way that really resonates with the people who it's being developed for.
Okay. It sounds like you have to kind of think a little bit bigger than yourself to use the ideas from your book.
You do. That's right.
So I don't know if you've ever listened to the Ezra Klein show or any of his podcasts before, but one thing he likes to do at the end of every podcast is ask his guest what three book recommendations that they have. So I'm not going to copy him exactly, but I was just wondering, what is one thing about the world that you would change?
I am struggling today with a few things. Our inability to deeply connect and as human beings and love and support each other without judgment. I think one of the beautiful things about this planet is how different we all are. And that difference today feels like it's being weaponized a little bit, if not a lot. And I would love to get back to a place where the more different we are, the more united we actually can be. And, I've been on this quest to answer these two questions that have been growing. And I shared this with you guys when I met you guys in Detroit. But, why are we so divided as human beings? And what are the creative ways that we can bridge those divides? And so, finding ways to continue to bring us together in really interesting ways is something that's really near and dear to my heart. I'm really afraid of all this technology, and you might call me a dinosaur, right? But I see the poison that this technology is for this younger generation, and their inability to have face-to-face conversations and look each other in the eye and actually feel into someone's heart, right?
Right.
And I want to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that that generation is better at that than we are, and then the one after them is even better at that than they had been. A couple of the things that are really important to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a younger brother who's about 13, and I can just kind of notice the difference between our technology habits and theirs. And it's just very different, growing up in that generation, it's a very different way of living, especially how you use technology and how you view it. So I do understand that. But thank you very much for coming on to the podcast today. It was great having you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Appreciate you, Nathan. Thanks for the platform.
And that's it for this week's episode of Smart Talk. Thank you for listening, and we hope it made you think. If you'd like to learn more about our research, check out hgsss.org. That's hgsss.org. If you'd like to listen to our content as soon as it's published, subscribe to our show. If you like our show, please leave us a rating, review, or even share with a friend. It goes a long way. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.